What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 115 of the Nest podcast. I'm Brandon. Joining me is my co-host, Zach. And Zach, we've got a lot to get into. It's been a wild sports week for us. We've had baseball playoffs. We've had week 6 of the NFL. And I want to give a throwback to something that we talked about a year and a half ago that shook the MLB world. And that was the news of Angels pitcher Tyler Skaggs passing away. Well, this past week, the man responsible for that has been officially indicted. And that dude's name is K. His last name is K. I've had it in my notes. Eric Prescott K. He's been indicted on charges related to the distribution of fentanyl that directly led to Skaggs' death. So, uh, you know, the indictment read that K in June of 2019 did knowingly and intentionally distribute a mixture of substances containing a detectable amount of fentanyl, a Schedule II controlled substance, and the use of said substance resulted in the death and serious bodily injury of Tyler Skaggs. Furthermore, text records suggested that K supplied several others within the Angels organization uh, with the drugs, according to the affidavit. What can the league and us as fans learn from this kind of an incident to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Man, that's a good question because of all things, fentanyl. Like, I is that used for pain relief? I'm assuming. I can't really think of anything else. I mean,
Medically, that's what I would assume, but I know recreationally it's used kind of like a heroin or meth.
right? But I've also heard that like fentanyl is so potent that like just particles of it can make you overdose. Like I've heard of cops just inhaling a little bit of it and they overdose. So I don't even understand how this could be usable in that form, but clearly whoever was distributing that and involved in that is a terrible person.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's going to be locked away. It says the two charges that he's being charged in connection with carry a weight of up to 20 years to life each. So if they're ran concurrently, then that's at a minimum of 40 years that he's going to be locked away. So good. He doesn't need to be on the streets. He doesn't need to be around these athletes.
Yep, exactly.
But let's move into it. Let's talk about the NFL. Of course, most of our fans have probably been watching the game that's finishing up right now between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, and it was a rainy day out there in Kansas City, so
They were in Buffalo, weren't they?
we didn't see a lot of passing. We saw a lot more running of the ball, which was good for me in fantasy because I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but we still got to see a fair share of Mahomes doing Mahomes type things and Allen trying to come on late and do Allen type things. So it was a good game. The Bills had a much better performance this week than they did last week against the Titans. The Titans absolutely kicked the dog crap out of them. But, for what it's worth, the Bills are still looking like a pretty decent team in the AFC. And in my opinion, the Chiefs, they still look beatable. They're
Yeah.
5-1 now that game has officially gone final. But if you look back at the past now 4 games, the Bills played them pretty closely. They lost last week. And then prior to that, the Patriots and the Chargers both had them where they wanted them, essentially at the end of the game. The Chargers were using rookie quarterback Justin Herbert, and the Patriots were using backup quarterback Brian Hoyer when they played. So the Chiefs look beatable. They've just happened to be able to win good games or close games. And I know that's what we always say is that the good teams win the close games and stuff like that. But in the playoffs, I don't know if they're going to be the team to beat this year.
Yeah, because then they'll be going up against the rest of the good teams, or it'll just be them against nothing but the best. It won't be, the scrub teams, if you will, and it won't be against people that are, second in line or whatever. So I definitely think they are beatable too. Something just seems different this year. It doesn't seem like they have the same prowess. It just seems like they're getting figured out a little bit. Because if you have an offense that can keep up, then you really have nothing to worry about because that defense is not going to be able to stop you. And I think if you can keep in it and they don't run the score too high, then there's a chance that you can beat them for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked briefly about them, but the Titans, they're going to be a tough road to topple this year. They're clicking on all cylinders. The Ravens are going to be a threat, but the Chiefs have yet to add that new piece that they just acquired over the past week in Le'Veon Bell. So how's he going to be able to play into that offense? That's going to give Andy Reid another tool that he can tweak with and play around with. And, he's an offensive genius as is. So I imagine that's going to take off with Le'Veon Bell in there.
Yeah, from what I can assume, they'll probably split the backfield with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and kind of share that load with Bell. And I don't know what they're going to do. Clearly, obviously, they're a pass-heavy offense, but I think if you add someone like Le'Veon Bell, that clearly just puts a big weapon in the slot at running back. And I mean, Hilaire is nothing to scoff at, but they haven't really used him like we thought that they would. They kind of just throw him the ball every now and then and let him run occasionally. But you and I were talking before during the game, and they don't give him the ball in the end zone or in the red zone.
Yeah, which is a shame. It's always the Pat Mahomes show whenever they're in the red zone. But today they really relied on Edwards-Helaire to carry the team, to the tune of 169 yards rushing. I mean, he put in work today, and he did not get rewarded for it at all in the red zone. He didn't get in the end zone at all today. For the season, he only has one rushing touchdown. And he broke that one from about 20 yards out. So we'll see if it changes whenever Bell's in there. Maybe I still see Helaire as he's going to be the speedy first and second down back. He's a smaller guy. He's only about 5'10", 5'11", whereas Bell is around 6'1". He's going to be the guy that's coming out catching the passes out of the backfield. With Andy Reid's offense, I could definitely see them doing a split tailback formation, so you never know which one of those two guys is going to get the ball, and look for them to utilize a lot more screen passes with the wide receivers blocking out on the end, get Kelsey's big body out there blocking for these backs that can really turn it on. So it may make them even more dynamic to plug in both of these top tier running backs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think they picked him up just to sit on the bench. They're definitely going to use Bell. I think if they were going to pick him up and just have him as a backup and just sit on the sidelines, they would have picked up somebody that was less of a high caliber. When you pick up somebody like Le'Veon Bell, you're going to use him immediately, and he's going to be a part of your offense for sure.
And I mean, it is worth noting that the Chiefs were looking to add some a veteran running back, because they did kick the tires on Adrian Peterson whenever the Washington football team cut him, which he eventually did sign with the Lions instead. But the Chiefs were sniffing around in that market. So when Bell became available, they definitely wanted to throw their hat in the ring. And Bell is doing his best ring chasing act, trying to be just like your boy Kevin Durant and go to wherever he thinks is going to win the championship. But we'll see what happens with all of that. Another note from the Chiefs-Bills game: Patrick Mahomes did become the fastest player in NFL history to reach 90 total touchdowns for a career. So congrats to him. That's a huge accomplishment. He's definitely, with everything that he's done so far, on his way to a Hall of Fame career. He's lighting it up everywhere you look. He's already been a Super Bowl champ. He's been a league MVP, Super Bowl MVP. So, he's setting records for the fastest to do things, and it's definitely putting that kind of a resume together. Another guy that is putting together quite the career is Cam Newton. The Patriots got beat in Foxborough by the Broncos, but Cam Newton got to put a little feather in his cap because he became the first quarterback since Michael Vick to rush for 5,000 total yards. So that's a little accomplishment for him. He rushed for about 75 yards in the loss against the Broncos in what became a field goal kicking contest. We saw 8 field goals in that game alone. 6 of them were from the Denver Broncos, and that's what put them ahead to win the game. So It
That
is
was
what
a
it is.
weird game. I figured that the Patriots would just steamroll the Broncos because Cam Newton was back. You know, it was back to game time. They were just ready to go out there and do their thing like they were doing. And I don't know what happened with that because Drew Lock wasn't necessarily that great. I believe he threw a couple picks. So that was just a completely strange game.
Yeah, well, it started out on the wrong foot because the first play from scrimmage, Cam Newton threw a pick. Wasn't his fault. It was batted at the line of scrimmage, and they jumped out and just a lineman intercepted it. Yeah, Brandon Mateer saying a huge fantasy game for McManus. I think he ended up with like 25 fantasy points. That's what I'm hoping for Greg the Leg tonight in the Dallas game. Is I need him to go off, maybe go 6 for 6 for me or something like that. But yeah, McManus had a huge game, but both of the picks for Cam Newton weren't his fault. They were both on deflected balls or tipped balls or whatever. So the defense just was able to get to him at the line of scrimmage. And that's something that the Patriots offensive line is going to have to adjust going forward. Keep the guys off of the quarterback, especially when they're running these little screen passes, because the ball is going to come out lower and right there at the lineman. So you got to be able to get it around those big mitts that are getting thrown up.
Yep.
Uh, one of the better games going into the week, I thought, was going to be the Browns and the Steelers. I'm glad Mateer's on here because I know he's a Browns fan, and maybe he can tell us in the comments what went wrong with that game, because the Steelers absolutely made the Browns look like the Browns of a couple years ago. Both teams coming in were top tier in the AFC North. The Steelers were 4-0 and the Browns were 4-1. But after the game, it's the clear-cut, definitive answer that the Steelers are the better team.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that was the fear of Cleveland fans going into this. The Steelers have always been their absolute, worst enemy. And they're always the better team. And this was no different this week. I personally think that Baker has an issue with pressure. I think when he's in a high pressure situation, he kind of tends to make mistakes. This was a big game. This is their divisional rival. This is the person that they're going to have to beat if they're going to be top in the division. And for whatever reason, he starts to just kind of crumble under the pressure. I think for games where he's kind of counted out and no one really cares, no one really puts him in a position to win, he takes that underdog mentality and runs with it and can do something. But I think when all eyes are on him and, hey, this is your time to shine, something happens and he just can't make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, and you might be right about that. You might be right about him crumbling under the pressure, but the Steelers defense was just swarming him all day. Minka Fitzpatrick took the pick 6 to the house, and Big Ben, for what it's worth, didn't have that good of a game. James Conner had a pretty good game for the Steelers running the ball, but that's about it. The Steelers offense really wasn't that incredible. Their line, like Mateer is saying, they were pretty good. But other than that, like Big Ben, not that great, pretty average looking game for him. He hit Claypool a few times, a fantasy darling, but
Yeah,
I wasn't overall impressed with the Steelers offense.
right. It was overall relatively lackluster, but I think you hit the nail on the head that the defense was able to kind of quell that Browns offense. They do have a very good defense rather. TJ Watt and the old boy you mentioned. Steelers have always had a relatively good defense. Some years it's been better than others. But yeah, they definitely have probably the best defense in that division, I would say.
Shane had a good comment that the teams that they've beaten are the Colts, the Washington football team, the Bengals, and the Cowboys. Some teams that aren't necessarily top tier teams, and they got blown out by the two good AFC teams that they've played, the Ravens and now the Steelers. So maybe the Browns are exactly who we thought they are. Their record was just a little bit inflated.
Sure. I mean, honestly, though, at least you can enjoy the fact that they're winning games that they should be winning. I mean, that's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. That's different from the Browns browsing themselves like they have in previous years.
Yep.
We mentioned the Bengals there. They lost to the Browns. They also came up just a little bit short this week at Indianapolis against the Colts. Joe Burrow, though, looks like he is going to be a star. He's had his team at least in place to win the majority of the games that he's been in. And that's saying something for a rookie quarterback. He's only won one game and tied one game. So it is what it is. He tied the Eagles, who have been a dumpster fire this year, for lack of a better word. But the Bengals may end up being one of the big winners in the 2021 draft when everyone else seems to be tanking for Trevor or failing for Fields because they already have a quarterback in place. So maybe one of these good defensive studs or a good offensive lineman that, won't be grabbed early on will fall to Cincinnati and they can start to rebuild around Burrow because he's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think out of all the years where a team goes out and tanks and picks up the number one draft pick that's a quarterback that's supposed to be the greatest thing ever, this year that finally happened. Joe Burrow is the real deal. And if the Bengals are smart, they will use this to their advantage and actually build around him instead of just do what they always do and just kind of cycle through players and never really get anything going. And I think if they start at an O-line and those basic things, you can build something here. He needs a few weapons. You need a few things to make him better, but you've definitely got something here.
Can you imagine if a few years down the road, we've got two top tier teams from Ohio in the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals?
That would be unreal.
2020 has been a bizarro world in and of itself, but if that ever happens, that's definitely insanity happening.
Yep.
The Texans look a lot better without Bill O'Brien at the helm, but they still weren't able to top the mighty Titans. Of course, we were talking about earlier the Titans being one of the best teams out there. They advanced to 5-0 this week, and they don't look like they can be stopped. Derrick Henry putting up 200 plus yards rushing. Dude is just a tank going out there on the football field. It definitely makes the rescheduled week 7 matchup now against the Titans and the Steelers must see TV.
Yeah, absolutely. This team is absolutely unreal. I mean, like you said, you've got an unstoppable force in Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill, of all people, is lighting it up. A.J. Brown's out there being a wide receiver one for him. This team is just crazy to watch. I got to tune in at the end of, I think, the Browns game, and they showed the last bit of the Titans game. And when they made that last pass to get the touchdown and to tie it, and then obviously kick the extra point and win it, it was just unreal to see that drive. It was wild to see because this is a team that, before Derrick Henry started making a name for himself, no one really cared about. I mean, when's the last time you talked about the Titans? Probably whenever they drafted Hawaiian kid.
Mariota.
Mariota. Yep. And, I mean, he obviously didn't pan out. For them to do this well is crazy. And I think Mike Vrabel definitely has a big impact on that. But Derrick Henry is the star of that team for sure.
Absolutely. And, Derrick Henry from right up the road in Yulee, Florida, from where I am. And he's kind of the talk of the town anytime that they come and play the Jags because he usually eats the Jags alive. That's the hometown team, so to say.
Sure.
And everybody down here wishes that he would have signed with Jacksonville, but, can't help who drafts you.
Yep.
Speaking of the Texans looking a little bit better without O'Brien, another team looked a little bit better after they fired their coach, and the Falcons finally won a game. They jumped out to such a huge lead that even they couldn't blow it.
Yeah. The 28-3 is not enough. They had to go 40 to whatever the other team scored.
The Vikings, they absolutely looked like dog trash. Kirk Cousins threw another 3 interception game. That's his second of the season. After the game, he said, if I keep throwing interceptions, I won't finish the season, which he's absolutely right. He needs to be replaced at this point because he's been absolutely terrible. Maybe instead of quoting Rocky with the whole, if I die, I die, maybe he should have been working on throwing footballs.
Absolutely.
Sean Mannion is the backup quarterback for the Vikings. So could the Vikings at 1-5 be in the tank for Trevor conversation?
I mean, I don't know. they have a dumpster fire there. And I think I guess that's because of the Dalvin Cook injury, maybe, but I don't know.
Man, Alexander Madison did not step up like we thought that he would, filling in for Dalvin Cook. Everyone in the world pretty much was saying that Alexander was going to have the game of his life against the Falcons, and he was stifled. He didn't really get much of anything going.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what their issue was, because from what I remember last year, the Vikings were a formidable team. I mean, they have some
Playoff team, yeah.
yeah, they have good offensive players, but this year is just a whole nother story.
Yeah, it's been bad for them. But as bad as it was for the Vikings this past Sunday, nothing compares to how bad it's been for the city of Atlanta this weekend. You had the Braves lose games 5, 6, and 7 to lose the NLCS to the Dodgers. Uh, the Georgia Bulldogs had a big lead over Bama and ended up losing that game. Georgia Tech suffered its worst loss since 1894. And the Falcons winning a game actually hurts them for the Tank for Trevor campaign, because now they have a win and it moves them out of, the dead last place with the Owen whatever New York Jets.
Yep. Yeah, it's just, to be a Georgia sports fan has got to be miserable.
Yeah, it's not a good year for Georgia sports, but I guess it is what it is. They're still hung up in that hangover from that 28-3 Super Bowl.
Right. Did you tune in at all for the Clemson Georgia Tech game?
I did not, but I saw the highlights of it, and I saw whenever I saw that it was like 50 something to nothing or whatever it was, I was like, whew.
Yeah. It was like a NFL team playing a junior varsity high school team. I mean, Trevor Lawrence did literally whatever he wanted, and I think the score got up to 70 something.
Yeah.
That was
I, I was out to lunch, and I know you texted me and you're like, Trevor Lawrence is insane. His first pass, he just threw 50 yards down the field or whatever. I was like,
yeah,
oh
I
Lord.
mean, first pass just was to the end zone, and he would have made it if the receiver didn't drop it or whatever. But just, they were out there just playing children. It was ridiculous.
Jeez Louise, that's insane. I mentioned the Jets a moment ago. They are the only winless team in the NFL for 2020 right now. They, of course, got steamrolled by the Miami Dolphins this past week, and Tua made his NFL debut. He got to come in with about 3 minutes left on the clock, throw a couple passes around. After the game, he went and kind of just sat on the field in his full uniform to kind of soak it all in, enjoying the moment. You know, good for him. He got to come in garbage time, really, and got to play a little bit and see what that NFL experience was going to be like. Get, all the jitters out of the way in a game when you're going to win anyway. I don't know. Maybe the Dolphins have something going there, because they've got a decent little squad right now. For what it's worth, they've had to trade away all of their stars that they had, and they amassed a crap ton of draft picks, and now they're able to draft around their future quarterback in Tua. They're doing it right, and I think the Bengals are going to follow that same mold.
Yeah, they really are. If you remember at the start of the season, I said that Tua would probably start week 4, week 5, and they haven't done that yet. They haven't just thrown him to the wolves.
They haven't had to.
Right. They're letting him get his feet wet, and I think that's smart. This is the best thing to do for this young guy. And yeah, you got to tip your cap to him, because this is a kid who suffered a potentially career season life-changing injury in that hip injury that he suffered, and he got to actually play in the NFL. And yeah, I mean, if they can just keep kind of letting him learn and letting him get his feet wet and letting him get used to the NFL, he might be able to do something.
Yeah, and I think he will. That injury that he sustained is the same one that ended Bo Jackson's career. So it's a pretty serious injury. Of course, modern medicine's come so far in that amount of time. Tua was significantly younger when the injury happened, so his body was able to heal a little bit better, a little bit faster. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be able to come out and have a decent career as far as longevity is concerned, especially if he's taken care of. And it seems like the Dolphins are trying to take care of him, which
Right.
is a great thing. I've mentioned a few times in here the tank for Trevor, fail for Fields. That's the race to kind of keep an eye on going into the latter parts of the season, because we have the winless Jets kind of leading the charge right now. And then we have a litany of 1-win teams. We got the Giants, the Falcons, the Texans, the Jags, the Chargers, the Washington football team, the Bengals, the Eagles, and the Vikings, all with 1 win apiece. Pretty crap teams right there. You can assume that like the Texans and the Chargers and the Bengals won't be taking a quarterback. You could possibly throw the Cowboys in that mix because they only have 2 wins, and their franchise quarterback just got injured with a pretty significant injury. I don't think they're going to trot Dalton out there for the next foreseeable future. So if for whatever reason plan A of signing Dak doesn't come to fruition, could we see the Cowboys jockeying to try to get in there and get one of these quarterbacks? This is going to be one of the more interesting things to have happen out of this year, is who's going to end up with those, marquee draft picks next year.
Right.
And I was talking to my dad a few weeks ago about, all this possibility and all this stuff. And he suggested something, that the NFL should adopt a lottery draft similar to what the NBA does. That way you would essentially get rid of all these teams that are intentionally tanking, and it would make it, oh, well, if I'm in the bottom, 8 teams in the league, my name's going to get thrown in that lottery draft anyway for the chance at the number 1 overall. So I can win a few extra games down the stretch and I can still be in that pool. I think that's a much better system than just outright having the worst record and you get in.
Right. Yeah, it definitely de-incentivizes teams from just throwing in the towel and absolutely losing out, because you have nothing to really gain if you win games like the Falcons do, and then they just put themselves in the middle of the road. If you're, bottom tier in any spot, you still get the same chance as everybody else. The only thing that I can see is that it kind of awards mediocrity a little bit. Like all of the mediocre teams get a chance. And I mean, I guess that kind of gives them the opportunity to get better, but at the same time, it doesn't matter, how bad or good you are. If you're in that mediocre kind of range, you all just are basically on the same level.
Yeah, I mean, I like it more than just outright being the worst and getting the best pick. I like the idea of a lottery. Take all the crappy teams and throw them in the hat, pick out one of them, and that's the lucky winner of the year. But it is what it is. We talked about the winless Jets. I think they could get their first big win of the season if they just fired Adam Gase.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it works for the Falcons.
It's worked for the Texans. It's worked for the Falcons. Maybe the Jets aren't going to ever win a game this season because they've been blown out every game. I think their average loss per game is up to like 19 points per game or something like that right now. You're not going to win a lot of games if you're giving up that many points per. But getting rid of Gase would be a huge win, in my opinion, because that dude is nothing but toilet. He's pulling the Jets even further down into the abyss when they were supposed to be trying to climb up out of it. Sam Darnold, for what it's worth, isn't a bad quarterback, but the Jets could move on from him and try to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields to come in and be the guy of the future or whatever.
Yeah.
If the case, Sam Darnold might find his way over to the Dallas Cowboys and take over the reins there. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I think the quarterback situation around the league is going to be very interesting, because these hot young new draftees are going to really just kind of throw a whole wrench in the gears of the NFL, because it's really hard to say who's going to get the number 1 pick right now, and it's hard to say if one of those teams that does fall to get the first round pick, what are they going to do with their current guy? Like you said, if the Cowboys do end up getting it, they don't really seem too high on signing Dak. So are they going to pull the trigger and just say, you know what, let's just throw in the towel? We've already lost how many games? Let's just keep going and go for this first round pick.
Signing that rookie's a lot cheaper than $40 million a year.
Yep.
But We got a couple old gunslingers in the Buccaneers and Packers game this week that ended up being a rather lopsided affair, and Tom Brady got the best of that exchange because, boy, did the Packers look like they were lost out there.
Yeah, absolutely lost. I mean, for what it's worth, Tom Brady really showed up at this game, and the Buccaneers showed up for a very, very good team. I mean, the Packers up until now were doing great.
Yep.
So I don't know what happened with the Packers this week, but Aaron Rodgers was not very good. I believe he threw a couple interceptions.
He threw interceptions on back-to-back passes. I believe that was the first time in his career that's happened.
Geez. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, for sure. One of the crazier things of the entire afternoon for that game was after the game, Tom Brady met up with a rookie for the Packers named John Runyon. Tom Brady actually played with John Runyon Sr. at Michigan. That's how you know how long Tom Brady's been playing. He's playing with the sons of his college teammates at this point. And, I posted that in our Sportszilla group, and Harvey, I believe it was, commented and said that Frank Gore could possibly play with his son if he hangs on for another couple of years. His son, of course, is a freshman at, I believe it's Mississippi State, but I don't see Frank Gore hanging on another 3 years after this one. But it's just insane that Frank Gore Jr. is on his way up to the NFL as Frank Gore Sr. is still clinging to the end of his career.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Yeah. Let's see. One more admin note that I want to talk about for NFL before we move into our fantasy booms and busts. The Panthers were forced to close their training facility today due to a COVID test. So they played the Bears in week 6 and then had to close down the facility today.
Wow.
So just when you thought that we were going to have, in the clear from all this stuff again, more tests are coming back positive. Doesn't seem like we're really going to get a chance to play every game every week without any kind of interruption. But the NFL's done pretty good job at mixing things up and moving things around.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm mad at having 2 football games on Monday, one of which starts for me, it started at like 4:00.
It was 5:00 Eastern time. So
yeah, so
you get home from work, the game's already on. It leads right into the Monday Night Football regular game. It's pretty awesome if you're a sports fan. And then sometimes we even get Tuesday night games. What?
Right. Yeah. A little silver lining there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and move into our fantasy boom and bust segment. We've been doing this all season long. Of course, Zach and I are big fantasy football dudes, and we love talking about it. And we love talking about who does well and who kind of sucks for the week. So, Zach, who did you have as your big stud, your big boom for the week?
Man, you got to say Derrick Henry, right? I mean, he has just absolutely lit up the scoreboard. Posted 40 points, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's just monster numbers.
Oh yeah, anytime you see a 40 burger on there, it's something that you just have to admire. Unfortunately, he played against me this week, so I've been sitting there staring at it all weekend, just shaking my head like, "God, Derrick Henry, why?"
Yep.
And this week was kind of a weird one because a lot of guys were on a bye week. Normally, one of our booms, which he kind of got, that's not a boom if it's your average score, was Russell Wilson, but he was on a bye this week. So we got to see a couple new faces as quarterbacks perform.
Yep.
And Deshaun Watson had his best week of his entire season so far. Granted, they didn't win the game, but Deshaun had 32 fantasy points, 335 yards passing, and 4 touchdowns. So he had a fantastic week and just wasn't able to topple another guy that had an awesome week in Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill had 30.56 points, 364 yards passing, also had 4 touchdowns, but he had 1 interception. So, and plus he also had Derrick Henry to boot. So you're not beating that.
No, not at all. And Lamar Jackson did well this week too. 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, 28 points. So yeah, there was a good number of quarterbacks that posted very good numbers.
Lamar Jackson last year was posting 30 points a game. So it was getting to where he was in that Russell Wilson conversation. Like, well, it's not really a boom if you're constantly doing it. But this year has been kind of an off year for Lamar, and he hasn't really had that opportunity to have those mega stats
Sure.
lately. So it's good to see him getting out there and performing well. Another guy that unfortunately I played against in fantasy this week was Will Fuller, who went off for the Texans. He had 123 yards receiving and a touchdown, posted 24.3 fantasy points to lead all wide receivers. So Will Fuller and Deshaun Watson are finally starting to connect, and that's good for them going forward, trying to replace D Hop. But it needs to be more consistent. You can't wait until week 6 to get it going.
Right. And a guy that I always harp on and talk smack about, and even on our 5 minute fantasy suggested maybe if you had another option, you could sit this guy, was Julio Jones. He posted 33 points with 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I talk crap about him, and immediately he just makes a huge impact.
That's how it works, Zach. If we talk bad about people, they usually turn around and have the game of their life because they're like, oh, well, if those guys at the Nest are saying it, I've got to change some minds, because they know that everybody listens to us, and they know how our words can kill a career quickly.
Right. Yeah. Super impactful over here at the Nest. But I mean, for a guy who has one of the largest wide receiver contracts in the entire league, it's about damn time that he's contributing. And I don't know if this is going to continue for the Falcons, but they definitely had a good game this week, and most of their players did well. Calvin Ridley gave me 18 points, even with Julio's huge game. So they had a good week.
For sure. And it seems like the Falcons wide receivers have been pretty good this year. I know Hayden Hurst got a touchdown from the tight end position for him as well. So Matt Ryan's been trying to give the ball around, but it is what it is. Yeah, Jerome knows the deal. Never give credit when stating facts either. Yeah, I mean, we call stuff all the time, but then these guys never turn around and give us credit. What's up with that? Well, let's talk about some of the guys that let us down in fantasy this week. And you can't talk about being let down any more than Aaron Rodgers let you down.
Man.
Aaron Rodgers posted 3.8 fantasy points. He only had 160 yards passing and threw for those 2 interceptions. Yikes. This is a guy that was lighting the world on fire before week 6, and then all of a sudden the Tampa Bay defense ate him alive.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an awful showing for him. Terrible.
Yeah, not good. And we talked about him earlier. Ben Roethlisberger, he really didn't have that great of a week. 10.98 fantasy points, 162 yards and a touchdown. That's all he was able to muster up. Like I said earlier, it was James Conner that kind of carried the team, and the defense scoring and getting in there is what won for the Steelers this week.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, and another big guy that normally does well, Odell Beckham had a not great day. 4.5 points, 2 receptions, 25 yards. The Steelers absolutely ate them up. So no points for him.
Yeah, no. And we talked about him again a little bit earlier. Alexander Madison. He was a bust. There's a million things that he wouldn't do, and that was run the ball. He was not running at all. 4 carries for 26 yards. He was supposed to have 4 fantasy points, only 26 total yards. He was supposed to have a breakout week versus a bad team, and he looked like the worst player on the field.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It is what it is, I guess. You're not always going to go out there and shine. He went out there and balled against the Seahawks 2 weeks ago now, but the Falcons were game. They were ready, and they took advantage of it. So it is what it is.
Yep.
Jerome saying the worst performance since his rookie season. I'm assuming he's talking about Aaron Rodgers on that one.
Yeah,
I know
I believe it.
Jerome's a Packers fan, so it sounds like he was probably alluding to that one. We've got a bit of a delay from the time that you guys comment when we're talking, so we have to kind of remember what we were talking about.
Yep.
Like 30, 45 seconds ago. But something else that happened this weekend that we have to talk about, we have to acknowledge, and that was the conclusion of both championship series in Major League Baseball. We're down to the final two teams. We're down to what's going to be a great World Series, in my opinion, between the Rays and the Dodgers. And we have our baseball insider, Brad, standing by, ready to come in and talk to us, tell us what he saw in the ALCS and the NLCS, and kind of get his ideas, what he thinks is going to happen going forward in the World Series. So without any further ado, let's bring Brad in here and talk to him a little bit about baseball. Brad, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, man. I see you're rocking the Dodgers jersey. So does that tell me that you're rooting for LA in the World Series?
Actually, no. I'm not rooting for the Dodgers. Just happened to grab the jersey. So, yeah, I couldn't find my Rays jersey.
I thought maybe you lost one of your bets. I saw on your Twitter that you said if the Astros get into the World Series that you were going to buy a Carlos Correa jersey.
Yeah, I'm so happy that they didn't win.
Man, I don't know if I could have followed through with that.
Yeah, I hate that guy so much, and I've tweeted, I've even put it on my Facebook about how much I hate that guy. But damn, after that series, I can't help but respect him for backing up everything that he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, he definitely did do his part. But yeah, the shit talking from him is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that was I get a lot of banter from a lot of Houston fans, and they were like, yeah, you just gotta not listen to him, but he's backing it up, and that he did.
Yeah, he was one of the only Astros for the majority of the series that was actually swinging a big bat. They had a few games where the bats came alive, but Correa was the most consistent. One guy from the Rays that has been consistent for his entire playoff career is Charlie Morton. And Charlie Morton put the final nail in the Astros coffin, his former team, and he's worth every penny that the Rays have paid him.
Absolutely. And the other one that's been pretty consistent with the Rays was Randy Arozarena. I mean, he's got the most home runs as a rookie in the postseason for the Tampa Bay Rays. What is it, 7, I believe? He just passed Evan Longoria.
Yeah, and that's a guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Like, he's not one of these young stars like Fernando Tatis or Ronald Acuna or anybody like that you expected to go out there and ball. It's some guy named Randy is what the meme was saying, and you're right. Arozarena, he just went out there and balled his tail off, and I'm here for it. I love whenever these underdog guys come along and they make a postseason legend of themselves. And that's what he's done.
Yeah. And what's funny? Like right before you guys brought me in, I was looking at this picture someone posted in one of the groups on Facebook. They were like, Randy Arozarena has 7 home runs in his first postseason. Mike Trout only has 1.
And Mike Trout's getting paid like $300 billion compared to Arozarena probably getting paid in peanuts and hot dogs.
Yep.
Right. It's insane.
That's baseball for you, folks.
Absolutely.
So, obviously the Rays are going on to the World Series, their first World Series in franchise history, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, they went in 2008, didn't they?
Yeah, they went in 2008 and lost to the Phillies.
That's right. I forgot about that one. I forgot. For some reason, I was thinking it was Phillies Yankees in back-to-back seasons. But yeah,
the only team who hasn't made it to the World Series so far is the Seattle Mariners.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking this was their first one. Okay, their second World Series in their franchise history. not as cool as your first, but hopefully they'll get their first World Series victory this time around. And of course they're going against the mighty LA Dodgers, who have been on like a 28 year World Series drought.
88, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's more. I think
like up in the 30s then, 30,
yeah,
31 years.
30,
Wow.
32, 33,
30,
I think.
Yeah, something like that. 30 something.
Yeah, and I mean, for as big as a organization as the Dodgers are, this is a god awful drought. And I think if they don't win the World Series this year, big changes are coming.
Well,
yeah, I couldn't agree more on that.
We've said it for a while now that it's World Series or bust for them and Dave Roberts. If they don't win it this year, he's out of a job. And they came a nut hair away from losing it to the Braves. Like I said earlier, when I was bashing on the city of Atlanta, the Braves had to lose game 5, 6, and 7 to lose it all because they were up 3-1 in that series. And they even had a 3-0 lead at one point in game 7 of the NLCS. So the Dodgers definitely clawed their way back.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dodgers jumped early, or the Braves rather jumped early and got a good lead, and then just by sheer just getting after it, the Dodgers came back. And to their credit, the Dodgers bullpen really did well. Urias really came in and put that game away, basically. And honestly, I was at the beginning of that game, I was thinking, okay, the Braves are just going to light this bullpen up because Dustin May threw 9 balls in a row and just had a god awful start. And then the guys that came in after him were able to do it. It was kind of wild to watch.
Yeah, you and I were actually talking during that, or tweeting each other, and it definitely didn't look like May had it. I mean, Acuna got on base, he stole second, and like right then and there, I was like, this isn't good for the Dodgers.
No, yeah, I thought the wheels were going to fall off right there in the first inning.
One thing we can say about the Braves, though, is they're going to be good for years to come. They have a solid young core. They've got decent enough pitching. If they can get a little bit better, maybe pick up a free agent arm or two to fill in and bolster that bullpen and that starting rotation, the Braves are going to be back. And, the National League is an exciting league with the resurgence of the San Diego Padres. The Braves are back in contention every year. The Dodgers are still hanging around, and we've got some good teams in the National League, so it makes it for more exciting. And it sounds like the DH is here to stay.
Yeah, boy, I hope so. I think the National League needs it. I think they're always playing behind the American League teams because they have the pitchers hit, and that's just not gonna win you any games. Sure, it's great for tradition and all that stuff, but honestly, certain things have to be kind of put to bed, and I think the DH is here to stay too.
If there's anything from this year that I'd like to stay, it's definitely the DH. I've been very big on the fact that there's been talk about the DH being implemented into the National League for a while. And out of all the crazy rules that they've come up with this year, that's the one I'd like to stay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this was the catalyst for them to just kind of go ahead and do it. This is kind of how they brought it in. And obviously everyone just kind of accepted it because this was a weird season anyway. And now it can just stay here. And I don't think people will be mad about it. And if they are, they'll get over it.
I mean, look at Encarnacion. Look what it could possibly do for Ozuna. I mean, I wouldn't want him out in the outfield for me, but I'd love to have his bat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. He's a perfect DH. And I definitely think that the National League can benefit from having that position, and it'll help all of those teams be better.
As a Cardinals fan, you got to see him in the outfield pretty much every 4 or 5 games he would be there. And you were always coming on here being like, he's a great bat, but he can't field for shit. And now he doesn't have to. So, but I want to ask you guys, what can we expect from Clayton Kershaw in the World Series?
I think you can expect that he's going to lose a game.
I mean, that's kind of his MO in October, right? Like,
I mean,
that's what he does.
He basically almost did it against the Braves, but I think his batters helped him because what was it, game 5? I think that he pitched. They beat up on him a little bit.
I think Kershaw kind of has the same the same bad luck that David Price did. He just couldn't win the big game. I think I want him to get that monkey off his back because it's Kershaw and he's definitely he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame, but I kind of don't want him to win a game because I want the Rays to win. And the reason why I want the Rays to win is because the Red Sox chief baseball operator, he's the one that built this team. And if we can get fans that just shit all over him because he sent Mookie out to LA, if the Rays win, there's a point proven right there. This is what he can do. This is a team he helped build.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Brad, that I hadn't really thought of. That this is the team that Chaim Bloom essentially was the architect behind, and he did it on a very, very minimal salary. In fact, Mookie and Clayton Kershaw together make just a little bit less than the entire Rays World Series roster. So that says something right there.
Funny thing, I actually received a text message right before I came in here that showed that exact same thing. And I also saw that I believe Jose Altuve was making $12.7 million, and the lineup, I forgot what game it was, but the lineup for the Tampa Bay Rays, the entire lineup was making 12.5.
Yeah. So, I mean, that tells you something that Chaim Bloom was able to put together the pieces of a World Series contending team with a very, very small budget. Imagine what he can do in Boston whenever they give him the purse and say, all right, spend whatever you need to spend to get your pieces. So it could be something great if he's able to actually go out and get some of the guys that he wants to get. And then he's able to plug in the guys that are just the good fits.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what Chaim Bloom is going to be able to do for the Red Sox in the future, I think.
I think you could easily make a Moneyball 2 and have Chaim Bloom be the star of that.
That's funny you say that because Billy Bean's trying to get in on some action there in Boston. So,
dude, as soon as I heard about that, I went and bought some stock in the Red Bull acquisition.
I don't blame you. That's not a bad move to make. Going back to what was Game 7 of the NLCS and how it could be played forward. Cody Bellinger dislocated his shoulder celebrating the go-ahead home run. How is that going to impact him and the Dodgers going forward into Game 1 of the World Series, which I believe is on Wednesday, right?
Game 1
Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday. Oh, wow.
Yep.
They're not giving these guys any break, are they?
No. And what sucks is they played all 7 games of the NLCS in a row.
Yeah, no days off.
So the wild card was consecutive. The division series were consecutive. The championship series were consecutive. But the World Series is 2, 1 day off, 3, 1 day off, 2.
So essentially as if they were traveling, even though they're all going to be played in Arlington.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. I like the way that they're doing that. I think telling guys to play 7 games in the playoffs in a row is a lot to ask because they're putting it all out there every night. And I don't know if this workload had anything to do with Bellinger's injury, but to injure yourself like that on a celebration, that raises questions for me. I mean, did he have something that was lingering or something like that? That really sucks to see.
Makes me think of Johnny Walker and celebrating his UFC victory and dislocating his shoulder and being out for months because of it. So,
yep. Which shoulder was it?
His right.
Yeah, that ain't good. He's a righty, isn't he? Or no, is he a lefty?
No, he's a lefty. But even still, that still impacts the bat, and he's a power hitter. So
Yeah, he has one of the most violent swings in all of MLB. So.
Did you see that bat drop yesterday?
Yes.
That was just, I think that was better than a bat flip.
I thought the same too. I thought the bat drop was like just everyone's doing the bat flip, and he just said, "You know what? I'm doing my own thing," and I think it was perfect.
The one that I saw was that I think is the best of all was our buddy Adam sent us a link from, I believe it was the Korean Baseball League or Japanese or something.
Yep, the KBO, I believe.
But the center fielder robbed a home run and deked out everybody thinking that, oh, I didn't catch it. Dang it. And the guy ran all the way around the bases, high-fiving all of his teammates. And then he just throws the ball in casually like, I got you.
Funny story about that guy. He used to play for the Boston Red Sox.
Really? Who was it? What was his name?
I have no idea.
Okay. So obviously nobody that important.
Yep. And it wasn't the KBO. It was the CPBL, which is the Chinese Professional Baseball League.
Oh, okay.
Very well.
So
I can't read any of the writing. So when it was just on there, I was like, well, it's probably Korean or something.
I didn't even know that China had their own league. That's interesting.
It's weird because I believe it's in Taiwan.
Interesting.
Yeah, I believe that the Chinese government considers Taiwan theirs, but obviously it's not. There's I remember hearing something that there's a weird stipulation with that obviously Taiwan wants their independence, but China somehow thinks that they own Taiwan, but that's neither here nor there.
If I would suggest that if you guys ever get a chance to check a game out, because over there, the way they do it, I mean, like the game's a little different, but like they celebrate differently. So like at the beginning of games, they have like guys come out on the field and play songs. They have cheerleaders, and they have an MVP ceremony for every game.
Wow.
That's cool.
Kind of like NHL. Yeah, the NHL has like the 3 stars thing.
Yeah, exactly. 3 stars of the game. Yeah.
Do you remember the president of Sportzilla had sent us some videos of a Korean baseball game? I believe he's stationed in Korea, and their celebrations are insane. Like they go all out for just regular games.
Yep. I've watched one game, but I follow. I think it's called 11 something. I'm not sure. I'll send it to you guys when we get off here. But they televise it on Twitter and Twitch.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So and they do. The one game that I did end up seeing had English announcing.
That's nice.
But the thing that sucks about it is it's on at 6:00 in the morning.
Sure.
Yeah, that is a downfall for most of us, especially if we're already on our way to work or whatever at that time. Anyway, Brad, we hope that we can have you back next week whenever we have some World Series news to talk about. At this point, at this rate, the World Series may even be over with by that time. So we may have a winner, depending on how the series goes. If it goes to a full 7-game series, then we'll have a couple of games remaining after the fact. So we can give our final thoughts on who we think is going to win. But before we go, who do you think it will win and in how many games?
I think the Dodgers are going to win. I think it's going to be 5 games. Like I said, I want the Rays to win, and I told you why. But I think it's their time.
Finally get over that hump. Zach, what do you think?
I say Dodgers in 7. I think the starting pitching of the Rays is going to beat up on the Dodgers in the beginning. But as soon as they can get to the lower guys in the starting pitching and get to those bullpens, I think the Dodgers have a ton of offensive talent. And it's really just up to the bullpen and the starting pitching of the Dodgers to kind of stave off the Rays. So I say Dodgers in 7.
I'm going to be the odd man out and go between you and say Rays in 6. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm calling. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. Who knows? It might be a 4-game sweep for somebody. So we'll see what happens. But we'll definitely have you back on, Brad, to talk about the results. Thanks for joining us once again this week to talk baseball.
One quick thing before I go,
Sure.
I just found out the Rays are. There's talks about the Rays bringing up prospect Wander Franco, so he could be making his debut in the World Series, which is one hell of a way to make a debut.
No kidding.
So,
What do you know where he's ranked as far as the MLB pipeline?
I don't have that information.
Okay, no worries. We'll have it next week if he does make the debut. So good deal, Brad. Thanks, bro.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Peace.
Yep.
Now, Zach, before we get off here, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about some fighting. So
Yeah,
what are them fighting words that you had?
we had a couple big fights this weekend. The first being a boxing match, and this was an interesting one because for the longest time in the lightweight division, Lomachenko has just held the belt and has been basically unbeatable. As far as I know, this is the biggest fight this year in boxing. They haven't really done a whole lot, and the UFC has kind of stolen the limelight in the fighting world. But this was a huge one. A kid that I had never heard of. I'm not necessarily the biggest boxing fan, but I try to catch the big games. Named Teofimo Lopez just came out and outboxed, outclassed Lomachenko. It kind of got interesting at the end of the fight. Lomachenko kind of started getting stuff going, but it wasn't enough. And Lopez did end up winning by decision. And he becomes the youngest boxer in the lightweight division to hold 4 unanimous belts. If you don't know, boxing has a shit ton of organizations and they all have their own championships. And he holds 4 of those now. And I think he's definitely put himself on the map. And he had some pretty interesting words on his post-fight interview. And we're going to share those here real quick. So let's get that going. Can you guys hear that?
Turn it up just a little.
This is the new generation. We're bringing back what the old school was: fight the best, and you push on it. I'm not here to pick and choose who I want to fight because I want to defend my title and keep that. Oh no, nah. And now, who knows where my figures are gonna go up, if they're gonna go up after this. I mean, that's the thing. Everyone wants to be like Mayweather. In order to be like Mayweather, you got to be like Pretty Boy first. You got to fight those guys that they don't think that you'll win. You got to fight the likes of those guys that are undefeated and is a good fight in order to make those type of millions that people want to make. Why are you buying so many chains and all this at an early age? You're not making nothing. You're not making not a dollar. So I mean, I'm just thankful that I'm able to be the first one to do that and push for the young ones out there.
So if you're not aware, Floyd Mayweather, before he was Floyd Money Mayweather, was Floyd Pretty Boy Mayweather. And his whole shtick was he would fight anybody and it didn't matter. And he really did do that. And he fought basically anyone that would come at him. And that's how he made a name for himself. And what Lopez here is saying that, kids win one decent fight, make maybe $1 million or probably not even that. And they start balling out. And from what he said, he wants to continue fighting and wants to, raise the stakes for himself, if you will, instead of just kind of doing the Andy Ruiz thing and making one big fight and winning that and then petering out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like he has a good head on his shoulders. He, talking about not going out and balling out whenever you're really not making much and stuff. It sounds like he's probably stacking that bread and building that nest egg because, as our good buddy Justin could tell us, the boxing career could be cut short in an instant. I'm pretty sure that Roy King is still in a hospital bed somewhere from his last fight that happened before COVID even. was going on. So he's been laid up for months now.
Right.
And it's not a good thing whenever stuff like that happens, obviously, but it can happen. That's your career could be cut short just like that in any kind of physical sport. And this kid,
Teofimo.
Yeah, I was about to just say Lopez, but Teofimo Lopez seems like he understands that and knows that, and he's trying to put that away. But at the same time, he recognizes that that's how he's going to build the legacy of being one of the all-time greats, is by beating some of these other guys that are looked at as the good talent in the sport.
Yep.
And he's already, won 4 titles, which is impressive on your resume, but now he's going to go out and defend all those titles. Pretty Boy Floyd, whenever he was coming up, a lot of the fights that he was getting in, he was the underdog. And now anybody that fights money, that they're the underdog, because Floyd Mayweather is the general consensus best boxer of all time, especially in that weight class. So,
right. Yeah.
So I really hope that Teofimo Lopez does continue on a great arc, because it sounds like he's got a good head on his shoulders, and it sounds like he's probably a pretty good kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exciting to see more divisions in boxing kind of become exciting to watch. Obviously everyone tunes in for the big heavyweight fights, but the lower weight classes have kind of been hit or miss depending on what superstar is fighting in those divisions. And I think this might be the next lightweight superstar that we can look forward to watching. The other fight that happened this weekend that was a big interesting fight was Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie. I went into that thinking that Brian Ortega had a very bad weight cut. I'm not sure if you saw any pictures of him, but he ended up shaving his head and just looked not great at the weigh-in. He just looked real drained, and it looked like it was a hard cut. But that really apparently didn't matter, because he put the screws to the Korean Zombie and put him away, and he took some time off, and it seems like he used that time wisely. And I see him going for the belt very soon.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Korean Zombie, he's getting older or whatever, but he's not a cakewalk of a fight. And for Brian Ortega to go in there and kind of take it to him was definitely saying something. But you're talking about belts, you definitely have to talk about the fight next week, whenever the Habib goes up against Justin Gaethje, because that's going to be one hell of a war, and one that I'm looking forward to watching. And we'll talk about it some next week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That one's going to be must watch.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime Habib fights at this point, it's what you've got to watch it, because that retirement's imminent. It's coming up soon, and you want to watch as much of this guy as you can, because he's just like Floyd Money Mayweather and has that 0 in his record. And those guys are rare to find. And when you can watch them fighting in their prime or coming out of their prime, you've got to watch everyone that you can.
Yeah. And honestly, I think win or lose, this is probably his last fight. And I believe he will retire at the end of it. I don't see him going out there and fighting anyone else. I think he's going to move into a coaching role. They've got a team of killers out of Dagestan. One of his cousins was actually supposed to fight this weekend, I believe. And I think either he's out because of COVID or some sort of injury or something. But I mean, they've got tons of talent there. And I think he's going to try to kind of just wrap up his legacy here and move on. Because like we said, his father passed, and he had always said that if his father can't be in his ring or in his corner, that he doesn't want to fight. So this might be the last fight that we see Khabib in.
Yeah, and that makes sense that he would retire and transition more into the coaching realm and kind of step into his father's shoes, so to speak, because that's what his father has done for years and years and years. And now Habib set himself up financially through being a fighter for all these years, and now he can pass on his knowledge to the younger generation and just continue to get those killers coming out of Dagestan. I feel sorry for the Bears. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that a bear would have a great chance at wrestling a human, Not if that human's from Dagestan.
Nope, not at all. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for the comments and everybody that's been so awesome in the section in there. We come live every Monday night to do this podcast, and it's always great whenever you guys are tuned in with us. Be a friend, tell a friend, go out and tell somebody about the show. That's how we're going to continue to grow. See new names popping in our comments all the time. That's awesome. And we love seeing on our podcast feed where everybody's from. So whenever we get new downloads from new states or countries or whatever, it's pretty cool to see all that stuff. We also have been doing our little 5-minute fantasy segments where we come on and do waiver wire Wednesday. And we also do a start 'em and sit 'em either on Saturday nights or Sunday mornings, just depending on our schedules. And those have been a lot of fun. We would love to get more feedback on those, if that's actually helping you out in your fantasy lineups, or if it's something that you just kind of you hear it too late or whatever. Maybe we can adjust fire on the times that we do them. So guys, let us know. Hit us up in the messages or the comments, and we read everything that you guys send to us, and we appreciate it all. And we will be right back here next week on the Nest Podcast. We'll see you then. Peace.